Good afternoon and welcome to the MOFAS Grant Information Session. My name is Ruth Richardson and I'm the Director of Programs for the Minnesota Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome, and I'll be one of your moderators today. Also joining us today is our Senior Community Grants Coordinator, Kendra Glute, and we also have our Senior Chemical Health Coordinator, Katie Trevisky, on the line as well. Today's grant information session is focused on our chemical health and recovery grants. Before we get started with today's webinar, there are a few housekeeping items that we wanted to address with you. First, all attendees have been placed in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. If you experience any technical difficulties during the presentation, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen on the webinar panel and use the drop-down box to select the organizer to request assistance. Today's presentation will be very brief and there'll be plenty of time reserved at the end for a question and answer session. And you can feel free to use the chat box or the questions box on the panel to use those to type in your questions. This webinar is being recorded. When the recording is available, it will be placed on our website and will be available for on-demand viewing. I will also point out at the bottom of the webinar panel, there is a drop-down box entitled Handouts, and you'll notice on that panel that you may download today's PowerPoint. You may also download a copy of the request for proposal and the budget form, which creates the entire application for this request for proposal. So let's go ahead and get started with an overview of the chemical health and recovery grants request for proposal. We'll talk a little bit about what we're looking for, spend a little bit of time talking about some of the key dates and milestones that it's necessary for you to be aware of, and also talk through some questions that were received at our in-person pre-proposal conference that was held a couple of weeks ago. So the Minnesota Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome is requesting requests for proposals on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Health. And we're looking for agencies that are able to provide comprehensive, gender-specific services to pregnant and parenting women known to use or abuse alcohol or other drugs. Children exposed to alcohol and drugs prenatally can experience many long-term health problems and adverse outcomes that we're all aware of. And the objective of this RFP is to reduce the number of babies born exposed to alcohol and drugs prenatally. In total, there is $444,000 available over 2 years to fund different agencies. And the time period of the year one funding is estimated to go from October 2015 of this year through June 30th of 2016, and then year two of the funding is anticipated to be awarded from July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016. In total, we anticipate awarding 3 grants, and while there are no requirements for matching funds, we do see the ability to leverage additional funds or in-kind services as a plus for an application. One of the questions that we have received about the awards is whether the awards will be in 3 equal amounts, and we just wanted to be clear that the 3 grant awards will not necessarily be in equal amounts. At the end of the funding cycle, we have to report back to the legislature on outcomes for this funding, and so we are really looking for agencies with demonstrated experience providing similar services that are ready to go, and we could see that for an agency that has the ability to start and get started quickly, that we would consider awarding them more funding than an agency that showed promise for future capacity for doing this type of work. So just want to be clear that we are looking for agencies that are turnkey and ready to go in providing these services, but we will also consider agencies that show promise for building the capacity to provide the services that are outlined in the RFP as well. And the amount awarded will reflect on the outcomes in terms of the number of individuals that an agency estimates that it will be able to serve. So here's a brief overview of some of the services that are anticipated. In the RFP under project requirements, you'll find a more detailed summary of the services that we are looking for agencies to provide. As you can see, it's a diverse types of services that we're looking for, but in all, we're really looking for agencies that are able to wrap services around women with histories of alcohol or substance abuse disorders, and providing things such as care plans for clients, sober support, parenting support and training, some home visits would be anticipated, and case management that would look towards resource referral and also helping to advocate for those clients to access any of the services that they would need in order to be more successful. One of the really important opportunities that we have here is the opportunity to potentially integrate an evidence-based practice into the 3 pilot sites that are selected for this grant. There may be an opportunity for the 3 pilot grantees to receive additional funding. DHS, the Department of Human Services, and MOFAS are exploring the feasibility of integrating an evidence-based recovery program called the Parent-Child Assistance Program, or PCAP for short. The PCAP program is a long-term, 3-year intensive home visiting case management program that works to wrap services around the family of women that are pregnant or parenting with histories of substance abuse disorders. And during the grant period, if the research that DHS and MOFAS are currently doing is successful, there would additionally be funding in the range of an additional $70,000 that might be available per agency to evaluate their readiness and to set them up to become full PCAP or Parent-Child Assistance Program sites. So this is just more for your information. We will know more in October about whether the opportunity for additional funding would be available, but did want to have everyone on the call know that that was a possibility. And now I will turn things over to Kendra Glute, our Senior Grants Coordinator, to talk about some of the key dates and milestones that you should all be aware of.
Hi everyone, this is Kendra, and these are the deadlines that we will be talking about. It is a very fast turnaround for this grant cycle, so if you're interested, I would encourage you to not delay and start your application process. As you see, the first step is today, our informational webinar. We also are asking for a letter of intent that is optional. It's not required to apply, but it will help us prepare for the review process if we have a better idea of how many applicants there may be. So that letter of intent would be very helpful for us. The grant application is due on September 18th at 4:30 that day. You can submit your proposals either online, by emailing them to me, or by mailing or hand delivering one hard copy of printed application. So by having the option to do online, we hope it makes it an easier application process for you. Once we receive those, the review process will start, and we will be announcing the grant recipients in October. The grant period will then also start in October and will be almost the entire 2-year period and will be ending in June of 2017. So during that process, if there are any questions that you have about needing certain documents or anything you come across, please feel free to contact me. You can call me at that number. That's the number at our MOFAS office, or send an email, and I'll be happy to help you. Along those lines, these are a few of the questions that we have received from people already as they are starting to prepare their applications. The first one is, what is the amount of funding that will be awarded to each grant recipient? So this is along the same lines that Ruth said earlier. It is not going to be an equal amount for all grant recipients. It depends on a lot of factors. For example, your level of readiness when you are applying, if you are, as Ruth stated, at that turnkey point, or if you will need more assistance in being ready to put that program into action. And also consider the number of women that you'll be able to serve. So there may be some on a larger scale and some on a smaller scale depending on your capacity. So I really encourage you to consider what your proposed program is and create a budget that accurately reflects the program that you are proposing. Another question is, in addition to the chemical health grants, MOFAS has 2 other grant cycles open. Can an organization apply for more than one grant? Yes, you are able to apply. There are 3 areas right now: community grants, chemical health and recovery grants, and prevention grants. They all focus on a different area of work, and you are eligible to apply for each of those 3 grant areas.
And Kendra, this is Ruth, and maybe you could just share some additional information in terms of is it best for folks to reach out to you if they have any questions about the priorities of any of those other areas that we're looking for grants for?
Sure. So for community grants, we have different funding priority areas that you may want to consider. And I am happy to answer questions about that, but each program priority area does have a contact person that you would be in touch with as far as your idea to talk about if it's appropriate fit for what the grant will be, and those will all be listed next to each priority funding area on our website. Along with the prevention grant, that has another contact, that would be Paige Robson, and she is the point person for any questions related to those as well. So all of the names and contact information, instead of me listing it for you, it'll be easiest for you to see email addresses and names on our website where they are all posted, where mofas.org/grants is where you can find all of the information there.
Thanks, Kendra.
Sure. Another question that has come up is, can an organization apply for funds for training on FASD? No, the funds that we are talking about are not to provide training. If you are interested in a training for your staff, that is something that MOFAS can work with you to do. We have a training department, and we'd be happy to do that, but that is not what these grants are for. What is the review process is another question that has come up. So once we receive the grant applications, the review process has a few steps to it. There will be a review committee that is made up of individuals that are outside of MOFAS staff and it's not simply an internal review process. There's also a review of the financial health of all of the applicants, And if there are site visits that are needed, when applicable, there are site visits or phone call interviews as well. So if you have questions about the process of applying, there is my email address. And if you would like to talk to someone about your proposal, the program you are putting together, the content, and some ideas that you may have about the proposed program, you can contact Katie. That is her email address, and she can also be reached at the same phone number that was listed under my name. That's the same phone number for our entire office.
So now we will open up the question and answer session of today's presentation, and I will just remind individuals that you can feel free to use the questions box on the panel or the chat box to send any questions that you may have. And there's also an option to raise your hand on the panel as well, and that can be a helpful way to let us know that that you have a question that you would like to have discussed during the webinar. So far, there are no questions that are coming up, and I will give folks a moment to maybe type those questions again in the questions box or chat box, and you can send those to the organizer. As we're waiting to see if any questions come in, we can also give you a little bit of background on the funding that was received for these chemical health and recovery grants. The funding actually came through lots of legislative work this past legislative session, where we were able to work with the legislature, and they really understood the importance of increasing capacity working with women in recovery, especially where there was a risk of prenatal alcohol exposure, and really looking at reducing the number of babies that were born exposed to toxins prenatally. Our first question has come in, and the question is, could you give an example of a shared grant proposal or a partnership experience? Did you maybe want to start with that, Kendra, and I could jump in?
Sure. So we do allow you to propose, have joint proposals. So if there is a program that you would like to provide, but you don't offer all of the services, and you would like to partner with another organization that would work with you to work in tandem to be able to provide these women with all of the services that we're looking for in this grant program, we would encourage you to partner together, and we just ask that you identify one organization as your lead fiscal agent in the grant proposal.
Thanks, Kendra. And I think another thing that I would add as well is if you're considering a proposal that includes collaborators or partners, it would be very helpful to include information in the proposal that shows that you have agreed to enter into a partnership. As Kendra was saying, you do need to identify a lead fiscal agent. That's ultimately would be the agency that MOFAS would have the grant agreement with, and they would be responsible for fulfilling the grant contract, reporting, and all of the aspects that would go along with having a grant. But we do also really understand that within the realm of the program that we are asking folks to propose on, it typically intersects across different programs and agencies, and so you are definitely welcome to consider a collaboration with another agency as you are exploring applying. does not look like we have any other questions that have come through. So I will wait another moment and see if anything comes through. And just as a reminder, this is being recorded and will be placed on our website when available for viewing. And I would also remind people that the MOFAS grant site is a great place to get information on the grants, including a list of questions that will come through from grantees as well. So if you visit the mofas.org/grant site, you'll be able to see any questions that come through. It looks like we have another question. Is there a minimum of women served through the program the grant is supporting? So there is no minimum of women that is required, but what we would look for is a grant that would estimate the number of women to be served, and based upon the number of women that you would estimate being served, to actually tie the budget to that. A big piece of the work that we're doing here is going to be tied to outcomes. At the end of the 2-year period, MOFAS will be required to go back to the legislature to report on some very specific factors, including the number of children born during this program that were not exposed to alcohol or other substances. So clearly the ability to serve more women and families is preferable, but there is no set minimum. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Kendra?
No, I have nothing else to add.
Okay. Well, it looks like we have no other questions at this point. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions about the grant process, timelines, or specific information, Kendra's contact information is listed on the screen. Her email address is there. Again, the office phone number is 651-917-2370, and that can be used to call either Kendra about grant process questions, or if you have any specific programmatic questions, you can pose those to Katie Trevisky, and her email is also listed there as well. I appreciate everyone. We appreciate everyone joining us today for today's webinar. And if you have any questions, we really do encourage you to reach out on those. And just a reminder, as Kendra had mentioned, the turnaround time on this is very quick. So we encourage you to reach out early as well. Thank you to everyone for joining us for today's webinar, and we hope to have many of your proposals soon to review.